put this event together in the hopes of bringing government and private sector businesses into the same room to talk face-to-face about how we can increase trade with Africa. And it's really heartening for me to see so many businesses from the local DC area and from further afield who are really interested in the African market. They're all networking, talking, and looking at ways that we can promote the African trade agenda in a much bigger way.
Good evening. Welcome. Thank you all for being here. I'm Ian Oliver with ISI Consultants, and since 2012 I've had the great pleasure of working with Howard University, the DC Small Business Development Center, and several partners on helping small, medium-sized businesses get to Africa. Get to foreign markets, but today is really about Africa. I actually am going to Africa on Saturday, so this is really top of mind for me. I haven't packed, but I do have my visas and my shots. But earlier today, several partners joined together and we trained over 100 businesses who are interested in either expanding or starting their business ventures in Africa. And this is all part of building on that momentum from August. We had the leaders of almost every African country here. It was a great atmosphere, lots of celebrations, but after they left, you know, it's about action. So a lot of great promises were made, great themes of the summit, but we have a vibrant business community here. We have a vibrant diaspora community here, and we're a metro stop or an Uber ride from all the federal resources you can imagine. So we pulled these two events together today to, one, do some training, you know, impart some knowledge, some capacity on the businesses that are in our area who want to be doing business in Africa. But we gathered here today because where does business happen? When you shake hands, get to know people, and have one-on-one conversations. Some of you might be practicing your pitches right now. I hope so. But some of you might be striking deals or learning about a new federal or state resource that you didn't know about. So I hope that that's the case. We're just going to make some brief remarks now. We have a few guest speakers with us. I'd like to invite Bill Fanjoy to come to the mic. Bill is the director of the Virginia DC Export Assistance Center, or you might hear it referred to as the USAC. Bill is an Africanist. He just got back actually from opening the most recent commercial service offices in Africa. He'll be in Africa at least 2 times that I know of next year, and probably more. But he also was a Peace Corps volunteer in West Africa and actually managed a wildlife refuge in Africa, which I only found that out today, Bill. So that's impressive. But Bill's going to talk a little bit about some of the other programs that are being made available for companies in 2015. A few exciting announcements. So Bill, thanks.
Thank you very much. Now this is truly an African crowd. As I arrived tonight, it probably took me 20 minutes to make it into the room 5 steps. Apparently the word is out that our job at the USAC is to work with you and for you, our clients, to actually get you into Africa. As I was trying to get into the room, it reminded me of the first time I was in Africa 30 years ago. And it was a very different Africa from that which we see today. 30 years ago, we were working on World Bank money, USAID money, and we were digging wells and creating irrigation projects and rotating funds in order to help the villagers. Today, it's still that beautiful Africa. It's mud villages with dancing and singing and storytelling. And let me tell you a very short story that is almost unbelievable. 1 year ago, I'm sitting at my desk at the Department of Commerce and the phone rings. Ring, I pick it up. This is Bill Fanjoy, Department of Commerce. How may I help you? On the other end, it was, hey, Bakri, ikakeni wa, somogo kakeni, muso kakeni. Does anyone here speak Bambara? These are salutations saying it's been a long time. It's been almost 30 years since we've seen you, Bill. How's everything going? Now, it took another 30 minutes for us to go through everyone who was born, everyone who died, And this is why it takes about a half an hour to cross a village from one side to the other, because of these niceties. Well, those niceties have not gone away. At the end of the niceties, I finally said, well, why are you calling? Well, Bill, 30 years ago, we were digging wells, and we put together that construction crew, and we were doing irrigation programs, and we haven't had Peace Corps there for 30 years since you left. Oh, well, do you want me to help you get Peace Corps back into the village? No, that's not why we're calling. We need cement, and we need re-rod. We need trade routes. It came when you were there, but they've gone. They weren't looking for money. They were looking for cement and re-rod. Now, the compelling part about this story came at the very end when they said, hey, Bill, do you know where we are, where we're calling you from? And I said, well, you must be in Markala, the town that's about 10 miles away, because that's where the PTO is. And the only telephone anywhere close to a village. And they said, no. We're right down in the middle of the village under the baobab tree, calling with our cell phone. I was taken aback, and I said so. I said, you guys have got cell phones? This mud village, no running water, wells, no electricity, no roads, still donkey carts and donkeys and the music and all of that? And that really hurt their feelings. They said, Bill, the entire world has got cell phones. So folks, what I just told you about is from one of the smallest villages in one of the poorest countries in Africa, and they have got telecom. There's a sector, and they are looking for cement and re-rod. So if you're selling, I'll give you one village to sell to. So it's this reason why the Department of Commerce has doubled its size in Africa this year, and also the reason why the Department of Commerce's largest trade mission and most impactful trade mission, I believe, is going to Africa this year. It's called Trade Winds Africa. We've been doing it for 7 years, and let me tell you just a few pieces about it that makes it different from other trade missions. Number one, its size. You will be going with approximately 150 up to 250 U.S. companies who are doing business there. So you have the higher end trade mission part where you get access to ambassadors and to decision makers and to the government with other like businesses who you will be networking with. And we do focus on that. The second piece is business-to-business meetings. Approximately half of those companies will be meeting on the ground with buyers, with distributors, agents, and there we're vetting. And that's very important because we're making sure that the impact does happen. The statistic that we have from this trade mission is approximately 50% of the companies who go on it within the next year will actually sign a contract. Now that's a trade mission. The third piece is we are pulling approximately 25 of our econ officers and commercial officers across Africa down to Johannesburg for our conference part, where they will meet one-on-one with you to go over the market potential for 20 minutes with your company. They learn about your company before they get there. You have 20 minutes. When the bell rings, you go to the next market, and the next market, and the next market. The business-to-business part begins before you get to Johannesburg. So we go to our smaller markets, Ghana, Angola, Mozambique, Tanzania, and Ethiopia. We're looking for about 5 or 10 U.S. companies who will do business-to-business, looking for distributors, partners, agents. After 3 days of those markets at the same time, we meet in Joburg for our 3 days of real market research with the officers who are on the ground. Now, the overall cost is $2,500 for B2Bs in any of these countries, and then the 3 days on the ground. Unless you're not looking for the B2Bs, and I love talking about price because we're business people, right? For $500, you can go to Johannesburg and meet with all of those officers and see what the markets are like for you. After Johannesburg, then we go off to Kenya and Nigeria, where we'll have about 50 B2Bs in each of those countries. And that wraps it up. At the end of the last trade mission, which was to Colombia and Latin America, where we hit 5 markets, I asked a number of companies at the end, what part of this trade mission was the most impactful? What meant more to you than any other piece? And they all said different things. And that's the beauty of this trade mission. It might be the networking, it might be the high level, it might be the business to business, or it might be the market research sitting down with the officers. But one of those pieces, I guarantee you, will stick. So it's in September next year, and we'll have kickoff events at all the embassies starting in January. And I'm certain that I'll see many of you there, and I would love to meet you all tonight too. Thank you for having me.
Thanks very much, Bill. It's my distinct pleasure now to introduce to you our guest speaker of the evening. Matthew Murray is the Deputy Assistant Secretary at Commerce for the Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And he has previous experience in energy, specifically oil and gas, and has started and led many firms, many companies. But he's really known and most successful in helping companies succeed. We're really pleased to have you here with us tonight to help really sort of cap off this evening on Africa. So thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Bill. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And my apologies for being a little late this evening. I have been over at the Commerce Department doing some work, and I was right at my desk, and I've been struggling to get over here for the past hour, and I just barely escaped. So, I hope you're able to stay for a while, because I'd like to meet you in person, and I'd like to have the chance to talk to you about an area of policy which I think this president has gotten extremely right, and that is expanding U.S. business presence in Africa. And I want to go through this with you in a little bit of detail, but before I do that, let me talk a little bit about what the International Trade Administration at the Department of Commerce actually does every day, and how we earn our taxpayer salaries. And this is, it's been my privilege to be part of ITA for about 2 years now. I'm a political appointee. I joined from the private sector where I worked for 25 years. And it's been a great privilege, and I've learned a lot since I've been at the Department of Commerce. And the most important thing I've learned is that we actually do create jobs. And there's 2 ways that we do it through the international trade part of commerce. And the first is that we do trade promotion, such as the Trade Wins program that Bill described for you in detail. And we've gotten smarter about this. We've learned to be creative. We've learned to match supply and demand. We just don't send companies into a new country or a new market without very clear metrics, without very clear understanding of what the hot sectors are and where U.S. companies match up well with those sectors. And the second thing we do is that we strengthen your competitiveness in global markets. We work to not only level the playing field in tough situations where governance doesn't quite work, or where there's a high degree of corruption, or where there are non-tariff barriers to trade that are hidden from your view before you enter the market. But we also, in effect, build the playing field in some markets. There are places I'm sure you've thought of doing business or have done business where the playing field doesn't even exist yet. And so the Commerce Department, especially under the new Secretary of Commerce, Penny Pritzker, has become much more ambitious and engaged in the art of commercial diplomacy which often leads us to situations where we have to work with governments on the premise that the playing field does not exist. And so we also work very, very effectively with you, with local businesses and with local district export councils. And let me give you a couple of stats that will help shed some light on how things are going for you here in the DC, Virginia, Maryland area. But first, you should know in case you don't. And again, this is under the president, the current president. In 2013, U.S. exporters reached an all-time record of $2.3 trillion in goods and services exports, supporting 11.3 million jobs here in the United States. And that was done as a result not only of you and your work, which obviously is driving this, but also as a result of something that the president calls the National Export Initiative, which we set up in 2009, and with the goal of doubling exports to all markets in the world. And this has led the Commerce Department, other agencies of the United States, to become much more coherent, much more smart, and much more effective at working with business, including small business, and with all businesses at the speed of business to promote your products. A recent study from the Census Bureau on U.S. exports by metropolitan areas shows that in 2013, 156 metro areas exported more than $1 billion of goods each. In the same study, the DC, Virginia, Maryland metro area ranked 21 out of 25 top metropolitan area exports by export value. I think we could do a little bit better than that. And so tonight I want to talk to you a little bit about how we can do better specifically on the continent of Africa. But let me start by saying this is, I think, Washington is known and is in fact largely a service town without a lot of manufacturing and agricultural industry. But it is also home to some very key technology firms, construction firms, many international businesses, publishing, education, finance, and hospitality businesses, which are in high demand throughout Africa. So if you are a company which focuses on the U.S. federal procurement system, and you do a lot of business through the procurement system, you should know that there are procurement opportunities in Africa too. You should also know that 95% of the world's consumers reside outside of the United States. So if your business is not considering Africa at this time, it is time for you to get on board, because not selling in the fastest growing continent is just like leaving some money on the table. So a bit about Africa economic trends. We are encouraged by these trends and the growth we are seeing in Africa. And companies in the market should expect higher returns on their investments for quite some time. The transformation that African countries have undergone over the past decade is simply incredible. It's been said, and warrants repeating, that 6 out of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world are in sub-Saharan Africa. The average rate of GDP growth for the continent is over 5.2%. Africa's middle class has grown to some 350 million people, representing 34% of the population, and is projected to reach 1.1 billion, or 42% of the population, by 2040. And by 2040, it's predicted that Africa will have a larger workforce than India or than China, both of which have needed no convincing, by the way, to do business in Africa. And the more than 1 billion people in the region are earning rising wages and seeing an emerging middle class, and resulting consumerism is increasing demand for U.S. products and services. The Obama administration has listened closely to the private sector, and the U.S. government has upped its game in Africa, as seen in the successful U.S. Africa Business Forum held here in Washington in August 2014. Since this forum was held, the Department of Commerce has been hard at work following up on the goals and initiatives set out during the summit in an effort to increase opportunities for U.S. business. Earlier this month, In fact, I was with the Secretary in Atlanta just last week. We successfully stood up the first Presidential Business Advisory Council on doing business in Africa. The Advisory Council was established by an executive order issued by the President during the summit in August, with the goal of providing a mechanism to strengthen the bond between government and the private sector as we continue to develop and grow our trade relationship with sub-Saharan Africa. We expect this council to effectively serve as a task force that will help us target key priorities, discover new markets in Africa, identify solutions, and participate in guiding the process of the evolving U.S. Africa trade relationship. This should be done in a way that reflects our shared values with African nations and support the rule of law and recognize the changing realities on the ground. So let me talk to you a little bit about some of the key pillars of the President's policy towards Africa and how you, as businesses with innovative solutions, can plug into these policies and programs. The first one that you may all have heard of is called Power Africa. And this is something where, again, I think the President got it extremely right. The goal of Power Africa is to address a fundamental lack of electricity throughout the continent, which is effectively depressing the possibilities of economic growth for everybody, including not only you as U.S. businesses, but also local companies, local citizens, and local entrepreneurs. We estimate that today 1.3 billion people, or nearly 1 in 5 globally, continue to lack electricity. Twice as many, 2.6 billion people, still rely on wood, charcoal, animal or crop waste, or other solid fuels to cook their food and heat their homes. Work under the Power Africa initiative brings together Commerce with more than 12 other government agencies, including USAID, the U.S. Department of State, TDA, the U.S. Africa Development Foundation, the Export-Import Bank, OPIC, and the Department of Energy. And we bring together all of the tools of government, financing programs to support the participation of more U.S. companies in the actual business deals focused on increasing access to electricity for the millions in Africa still without access. Supporting widespread access to reliable, safe electricity and the associated requisite infrastructure is the foundation of economic growth and should lead to significant and more even development of markets on the continent. The response to this initiative has enabled the President to announce $33 billion in new commitments to fund the Power Africa initiative and provide power to 20 million homes, which represent 3 times the initial goal. In order to reach the President's revised goals, more financial commitments and regulatory work on the ground will be required. Another important initiative, and I know this sounds technical, but it goes to the earlier point that as we try to expand your businesses in Africa, we need to build and expand and create level playing fields for you. So in order to do that, we have to work with African governments on their local capacity to do trade, their local capacity to trade with each other and to trade with the United States. And so we have a new presidential decree supporting what we call Trade Africa, in which governments, U.S. government agencies, working with local African governments, are trying to invest in both the infrastructure, the hard infrastructure, the customs posts, the warehousing, the cold supply chains, the storage facilities that are needed to do more trade, and in the soft infrastructure, namely the ability, guided by clear rules, to facilitate trade within the continent and throughout, and with countries abroad as well. This is important because our long-term goal in Africa has to be, and we have to play a long game here, has to be to create the demand for your goods. And the best way to do that is to work with local governments to continue to grow their economies. So Power Africa, Trade Africa, and you're all aware, I'm sure, of AGOA, which is a program in which we seek to support U.S. exports, African exports specifically to Africa through a tariff-free regime, are all designed with the idea that we want to work with Africa on trade, not on aid. We want to work with them as equal partners based on mutual respect, and we want to be part of this new and next economic success story in the world. And let me close by saying a word about the program that was described earlier, which is Trade Winds. Trade Winds is something that you should look seriously at as businesses. It is a unique brand, unique to commerce. It's a reflection of many lessons learned, and it is a very exciting thing to be part of. We sweep into a given set of countries. We are with you, businesses. We visit as many places as we can. We visit multiple locations. And it has a kind of multiplier effect over, as described. It has a way of creating new opportunities that is very, very unique. And so it's going to take place. We've just learned that it is in fact official, and it's going to be taking place in 2015 on the continent of Africa. This will be the first time. I don't know if you mentioned the countries we'll be visiting, so I don't want to repeat it. But if you aren't part of this, you should look at it carefully, and we hope to see you. We hope to see you join it. In conclusion, it really is, I have to say, I cover as part of my portfolio Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, 112 countries. And of all those countries, and I'm an entrepreneur by temperament and by experience, of all those markets and all those regions that I work on, I have to say that whenever I visit Africa, I can sense a very, very unique energy. I can sense a dynamism among the people. I have met some extremely phenomenal business leaders who are not only building companies, but actually building industries and building economies in this part of the world. And so it's an exciting place to do business. If you haven't already been there and you're new to market, we want you to think about it seriously. If you're already there and you're trying to expand, we also want to be of tremendous value to you. So thank you again for your patience. And I look forward to having the chance to talk to you a little bit further, get to know you better this evening. Thanks again.